Hey everyone, I'm Charting Man Dan, trader and technical analyst with the chart guys. We're going to check in on the markets as we see the reaction to Google and Microsoft earnings after hours, and we see how the market is positioned heading into the FOMC tomorrow. Let's check it out. All right, so the S&P 500 futures chart, we have a stair-step pattern, meaning a higher low every single day, 9 days in a row. That's a lot of space for the bulls to work with. Even if we have a bearish FOMC reaction, the bears need to retrace 50% plus if they're going to prove something to me. And that means from the high, we would need to pull back 2% plus from here. We're also going to be watching for first hourly oversold conditions and the reaction that we get to it the next time we see it. We do have a bit of a bearish reaction here after hours as Google dumped, Microsoft pretty much flat. But that's enough for an initial bearish reaction as we see other tech names responding, where Amazon's down a bit and Meta down a bit as well in response. But again, overall, bulls very comfy with how much space they have to work with for next daily consolidation. The NASDAQ is a little bit weaker than the S&P 500. I'm on the 12-hour time frame for clarity. This is the daily chart, attempting a bull flag, but failing, at least initially. And I'm watching this 12-hour tightening range. And so if we hold the low of yesterday, then the bulls are just fine. If we break that low, then that is a failed bull flag. So if QQQ breaks 422, make that 423.15, then I would call that at least initially a failed bull flag, and then I would zoom out and look for a weekly higher low. As far as I'm concerned, the market is still in melt-up mode, and I was talking a lot about that at the end of October. This is very unusual market action. The bulls are extremely strong. And ever since that has happened, it's been nothing but bull flags. It's been daily and weekly bull flags for 4 months at this point. October, November, December, January. Yeah. So I'm still waiting for the market to tell me that we're not in a melt up phase. That doesn't mean, I'm going aggressively long right now. It just means that certainly still favoring the bulls as long as that is the case, and waiting for something to shift. Again, my mindset is I don't need to nail the top. The bears are not sneaky. They show up with high volume. They show up with all major sectors dropping together. And I don't need to nail the top to make worthwhile money as a bear if things are going to significantly shift. Until then, I look to buy daily higher lows and weekly higher lows as long as that's the direction of the trends. Semiconductors, as we know, led the way up in a big way. NVDA still strong. SMCI, earnings reaction, gap up and pullback. I shorted it this morning, and the reason for the short was looking back at the 22nd and looking for something similar where, well, the reason I was looking short is because they already pre-announced their earnings. So I thought, okay, that's probably priced in to a certain degree. And if you look back here on the 22nd, this was a gap up, a push up first thing, and then we rolled over very significantly. And I was looking for the same thing. And so we got the gap up open. We got a push up that lasted, 30 seconds or whatever. And I was just much more aggressive and jumped right on it. And it was a nice little bear trade. But temporary top being marked there. NVDA hit a new all-time high today. It's still extremely strong. I attempted an NVDA swing short. I had a runner from a day trade and stopped out yesterday with that strong close. And the reason I was looking short is, again, just knowing that I have, I'm only long essentially in my portfolio, 90 whatever percent, and just wanting some protection for daily consolidation when it shapes up. But bull's still holding on just fine. New base of support on NVDA is 600 psychological. But SMH is weaker than NVDA. And it is on the verge of weekly consolidation. If we break 186, then we'll look for the pullback and we'll look for a weekly higher low. But still hanging on at the moment. NVDA is up right now after hours. I'm sure some of these companies talking about AI, and that is helping. The financial sector is all bull. We're up like 6% in the last 9 days. Remember this monthly equilibrium? These longer term patterns are just so beautiful in terms of the amount of follow through that they get. That CCJ monthly equilibrium from last year. But XLF bull break took place at 35.38. And here we are over 10% higher, knocking on the door of the adjusted for dividends all-time high. And again, it's just another name that has a ton of space for a daily high or low. It's just, again, this is a meltdown. There's no other way to describe that. Just straight up. The consolidation lasted less than 1 week. Healthcare, weekly bull flag attempt. So we're coming off the all-time high. Extremely healthy weekly consolidation, trying to make it back up to the recent high. So no red flags there. Line in the sand now is 137. We would have to drop down and break that level for anything to change. And again, today was a perfect example of the healthy market rotation where the NASDAQ dropped a good bit this morning or midday. But that whole time, XLF was all bulls and XLV was a little bit of green. And so again, you know, if XLF's up 1% while QQQ's down 0.8%, the broader market's not worried about a thing. That's as healthy as they can hope to be with the rotation. IWM, one thing I'm watching for is the possibility of a weekly lower high here. If we set a weekly lower high compared to 205.49, we're going to look for a pullback and a tightening weekly range because the bounce retracement is already over 50% here. But one thing to make note of is that the last couple FOMC reactions, IWM and the low caps have been the sectors that have moved the most. So keep that in mind. Short-term base of support in the 194s on IWM. I've been watching ARKK and ARKW. They're both watching for the possibility of weekly lower highs. So again, if I am going to be looking bearish in the market, I'm not choosing something, you know, if I'm talking from a swing trading perspective, I'm not choosing the strongest names. I'm choosing the names where a longer term lower high is on the table as a possibility. And so there are sectors like that, whether it's ARKK, IWM, XBI is a potential daily head and shoulders. So if we have a bearish FOMC reaction, watching for XBI to try and roll over and break $86 support. But again, something like XBI, it's been trading sideways for over a month while, you know, other things like Meta and these things are just going straight up. So there are weaker names out there, that's for sure. Comparatively weaker names. MSOS bulls still got it. So bought the dip yesterday, continuation today. This is now the battle. Everybody's watching 988. We got close today up to 969, getting within a couple percent. And I am still watching this as a possible daily rising wedge, just putting on my bear goggles to make sure I don't miss this setup. But it would have to be a bearish reaction to the FOMC. Still oversold bounces working. Play this oversold bounce on the 5-minute time frame this afternoon. Get filled at 929. Exit 40% at 938. Stop under the low. And now I have a larger position than I had yesterday. And my break even for that add is under 924. So that's how, it's one of the ways that I use back burners to increase position size to try and continue going and riding trends. But I will exit that position if we break the low of yesterday or the low of today, because if the low of today breaks, it increases the probability that it's a potential rising wedge. But keep in mind, whenever I'm talking about consolidation in the cannabis sector, we got a lot of space for a weekly high or low, and I will absolutely be looking for weekly high or low swing trade entries. We've gone straight up now 6 weeks in a row. And in addition to the cannabis sector being strong, led by TCNNF, which has been on absolute fire, CMPS, Psychedelics, absolute on fire, and another one, 5-minute back burner today. Pull up the chart, guys. Back burner indicator, which is on our website. Fires at 11:22 or something. Bounce up 5%. And again, the way to play the back burners is sell partial, because when we bounce and then drop to a lower low, that tells us, okay, things are shifting. And so we want to be positioned where when that happens and when things shift, we're not caught by surprise and blindsided. We stop out, break even, say, all right, no big deal. We zoom out to the longer term time frame. Crypto stocks still have relative weakness. It was glaring yesterday, glaring again today as Bitcoin continues to bounce on its daily chart, but slowing down here. And so watching for Bitcoin daily consolidation in the short term and some crypto stock daily consolidation as well. Again, nowhere near the recent highs. Bitcoin's retracement on its bounce just about getting to 50%. If MARA had a 50% bounce retracement, right now we would be trading at 24. So you can see we are not even close. Need another 35% to the upside. So still watching the relative weakness there. The dollar is just grinding sideways on the daily, looking a little bit like a rising wedge. Bull break straight into consolidation. Bull break into consolidation. But we got to lose daily EMA 12. Look at how many times we've held it here. Bunch of holds, bunch of holds. If we lose it, going to be watching for weekly consolidation and an attempt at a weekly inverse head and shoulders. Certainly anticipating volatility on the FOMC reaction. But gold, weekly higher low is set. Nice tightening weekly range on gold. How this breaks is going to have significant implications for the next month plus. Whenever it breaks, probably sometime mid-February. Silver, decent bounce. After breaking weekly support, silver's just been chopping sideways on the monthly for almost a year at this point. We're trading at the same prices as a year ago. So just chopping around sideways, need some clarity here and waiting for gold's weekly chart to try and give it. And the crypto, I should say the metal miner stocks are clearly weaker, which isn't a good sign. Generally, you want to see the miners leading, and they just have been really struggling. But we'll see how gold breaks that weekly equilibrium. Oil. So I had been shorting the energy sector bearish, but when we got over weekly EMA 12 here, that's your red flag as a bear on the energy sector. After rejection, 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 clearly over it now, that tells us monthly higher low is set, and we can easily tighten up within this range for another 2 or 3 months even. So bulls hanging on. We'll see the direction that this breaks, this 2-month time frame, is going to have significant implications for the rest of 2024 with oil. XLE, I'm watching this weekly channel. We'll see how we close here this week. May adjust it just a little bit, but keep an eye on this channel. Same deal, watching for, if we fail, resistance, watching for the possibility of an inverse head and shoulders to try and shape up, but all depends on the oil tightening longer term time frame, bigger picture. And natural gas weekly trying to set a higher low. I honestly, the bulls aren't going to prove anything to me until we see it on the weekly, because the bears proved their control November. That's now 2 months ago. We had a nice bounce, but nothing came of it. We must see a weekly uptrend confirm for the bulls to tell us that something is shifting, bigger picture here. All right. We'll see what the FOMC gives us. Again, as a SPY bulls going into the FOMC, hit us with a 2% drop. That's just fine. Whatever. We'll look for a daily higher low. It's just a very comfortable spot to be in. Whereas, prior FOMCs, you're on the cusp of confirming a weekly downtrend if it's a bearish reaction, and the bulls' backs are against the wall. It's a very different spot to be. But still just fine overall. And backburners and cannabis and psychedelics. One day at a time. I hope you're all doing fantastic. Make sure you're following us on Twitter @ChartGuys and do some good things.